What's the worst piece of tech you've ever owned? HP printer. Just plain dystopian. Mandatory online account and internet connection to scan a paper when the printer is connected via a cable. Drives me mad. It's a tie between every printer I've ever owned. Printers. 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 Even the best printers I've ever had have only worked acceptably. A smart toaster, it was smart enough to burn it. A company from the 90s called Independent Personal Computers. IPC. I begged my parents not to get it and go with a more recognizable brand. We owned it for 4 years. And the only games that worked on it well were on sale long before the computer existed. Poorly built. Short-changed at every possible step. Not to mention the overheating. A few years down the road, I have a part-time job at a place where I have to dismantle old computers. Remove everything from the tower. See what all is usable or can be used for resale. Sound cards. Video cards. Other special cards added on. Etc. I come across an IPC that I have to dismantle. The internals of the computer are a war crime. It typically took me 30 to 45 minutes to completely dismantle, label, and paperwork a computer. An IPC took triple the time because of how poorly they were set up and how they were built. Where most of your components in a computer tower are screwed in with a standard Phillips head screwdriver to hold them in place. Motherboard, CD or DVD-ROM drives, added cards, power box, etc. An IPC also comes with 6 giant, typically melted by the time you're done with the computer bolts that have to figure out how to take off so you can get all the pieces out. I later talked to a friend who also does a lot of work with computers and asked him if he ever dealt with IPCs. The look on his face told me he had been through some shit with those computers as well. Printers. And that awful case management program that needed a network share to which all users had read, write access and which held all the private client information. And repeatedly crashed. Mainly printers. Though. What's your favorite song that has no words? Green Onions, Booker T and the MGs, the epitome of cool. Ecstasy of Gold, Ennio Morricone. Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, BFG Division by Mick Gordon. Clubbed to Death, Rob Dugan. Intro by XX. Song is so versatile depending on your feels, and I definitely need to look into remix and edits. Sleepwalk. What is a game you're positive no one knows or remembers? We played Zoombinis in elementary school. I think it was a puzzle adventure game. I recall them being blobby things with long legs and on skates or something. Crystal Caves. Old DOS game. Robotech. Battlecry, humanoid robot or fighter jet? Yes, both, at the same time. Number Munchers. 5.25-inch floppy disk. Anyone remember the card game Skip Bo? We'd always play it after Uno. Edit. Apparently I've been living under a rock since childhood. Jazz Jackrabbit, a computer game. What's something a therapist said or did that made you stop seeing them immediately? He answered a text while I was talking. Ironically, something I was struggling with at the time was not feeling heard. LMFAO. He kept falling asleep during my session. At one point he dropped his pen. Lol. When I was a kid I had a therapist who told my parents in front of me that everything I had been saying about my pretty severe mental health problems was a lie. He also fell asleep during a session. Also in front of my parents. But I was just a kid, so I wasn't really allowed to just stop seeing him. She asked me if I had ever been sexually assaulted by a family member. I told her about my grandfather touching my breasts when I was in middle school. She said, well, at that age you don't have breasts, so that doesn't count. Told me I did. Because I said I felt like I became different people around different people. Looking back, I was talking about masking, but she jumped to multiple personalities. She told my parents everything after promising confidentiality. Quite literally the darkest time of my life. Women of Reddit. What's your worst experience with a medical professional who dismissed you just because you're a woman? For 5 years I had blood in the urine and urgency. A handful of doctors just shrugged, assuming I have a vagina that bleeds, ergo urine blood. They assumed because I am sexually active it must be a UTI. Used birth control to skip periods. Still urine in the blood. They still tried to blame my period. They tried to blame UTI even when no bacteria was found. Finally got an ultrasound. Turns out I've been passing kidney stones the whole time. I was experiencing breast pain, so I went to get checked out. After a scan I was told there was no visible issue. Great. And that it was probably a side effect of birth control. Not great. When I asked the doctor if I was just going to have to live with it, he said, "Well, you're getting on a bit. You should think about coming off birth control anyway." Reader. I was 27. When I was about 12, my arm really started hurting. I was getting fevers and was in great pain. My mom finally brought me to a local orthopedist so he can check me out. For quite some time he just said, "Ah, she is a whiny fat girl trying to avoid school and sports." Typical. One day my mom had enough and almost yeeted the guy across the room and demanded an X-ray scan. Turns out it was cancer eating my bone away. He only said, "Oh, sorry. I didn't know." I told my doctor my new medicine was making my skin burn. And I asked if this was a normal reaction. And he responded, "I don't know, I'm not a psychologist." Got told I couldn't have a concussion because my hair was too thick after I got slammed into a cinder block wall. Readers. When I went to the 2 days later, they found I'd had a minor fucking brain bleed. Went to the doctor with fatigue, nausea, and abdominal pain. He insisted I get a pregnancy test before proceeding with diagnosis, despite me telling him I had not had sex in a year. Send me to get labs done, and ask me to come back in a month if the problem persisted. Came back a month later. Took some more lab tests. Same message. After a year, lab tech pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. Because this was my 11th pregnancy test in a year. The MF doctor had just refused to try anything else and pregnancy tested me without telling me. Switched to a female doctor. Promptly received a PCOS diagnosis. What massively improved your mental health? Knowing it's okay to leave some people behind. Practicing gratitude deliberately. I began thinking of 3 distinct things I was subscribed, my brothers.